Hello and welcome here on the TUNZE YouTube channel. Actually, we found another beautiful tank. We are invited at Mike's home. You know what? There are two things in this video that are really exciting for me. I'm getting the goosebump moment again. So first, there is someone who actually has more energy than I have. And second, the first generation of low pump ever manufactured are still operating in this tank. So this is going to be an awesome video with an awesome person and an awesome aquarium. So let's go. So typically the first question I'm asking the people, when did it all started?
So for me, I've been doing aquariums since I was like probably 12, 15 years old, right? I started off with the freshwater aquariums with the tetras and the little pink kissing guamis. It wasn't until I was about like 16 or 18, getting out of the house, right out of college kind of thing, I got my first saltwater aquarium.
Wow.
Fish only, nothing to do with anemones or any kind of corals, just fish, angels, triggers and stuff like that. But ever since then, I've always had an aquarium in my life, right? First moved to Texas, I had a 115-gallon saltwater aquarium downstairs. I got bored and got another 90-gallon aquarium upstairs, which became tough with the water changes. But finally, when I was able to, when we moved here, I was able to finally get a tank considerable size, something that I can really like expand on, and that's when I got my 215 here. So beautiful tank, and been excited about it.
You know, when we just came in here, it's really at the entrance. I rarely see this, so this is really a statement for the hobby actually, isn't
I
it?
will tell you, that's like I was saying before, like when we opened our front door, and what I liked about it, I have my office here when I used to work from home and stuff like that. So I get ease from looking at an aquarium and so forth. But one of the things that I did notice about putting it so close to the front door was every time I opened it, when my kids had their friends over, they'd peek in and they'd look. Half an hour later, they're still sitting here looking at the tank. We had deliveries, UPS guys, mail folks coming in going, oh my God. And the weird thing with the lighting system is at night, there's a blue tone that emanates through the door, and people are always like, what is that blue light that's coming out of your house? So, the neighbors know my tank, they're aware of it, they love it. It creates a talking point when folks come to, buy the house.
How old is this tank? When did you set it up?
Yeah, so we purchased this house in 2009. One of the first things, I think even before we had electricity turned on or so, I was actually setting up the tank in its position. So we had it since about 2009. It's been up and running. Most of the fish in here, especially like the mated pair of angelfish that are breeding and laying eggs, they've been here since kind of day one. So they've been here for quite a while with the tank as far as it's been set up. Cool. Throughout those years, I've had some iterations. I've done some different aquascaping. I've added some new lighting. But for the main period of time, the structure itself, the tank itself, and the way I've plumbed it to the garage has stayed pretty consistent.
This is something I've never seen in Germany before. Such a furniture. So it's a massive, and typically the furniture doesn't have this huge amount of character. Is it?
Yeah. Well, as you can see, like I said, we bought the house in 2009. Yeah. And I think the only reason I was able to get the tank in here because my wife didn't want a fish tank that looked kind of like out of place, right? So when you look at the wood doors, the wood railing, it was easy for me to we have the wood doors to the study. So one of the things that made it kind of fit with the home a little bit and made it acceptable for her to be like, that's a big old tank, was to kind of get this finished on it. So I did have it kind of worked, and it actually looks really good. It does kind of have an old feel to it, but the tank itself really does stand out in terms of just the way it looks. Cool. So believe it or not, the way I obtained the tank, right? So when I first came down here, I was looking at new tanks, new systems and so forth. And of course, in this hobby, the cost is something that's just like overwhelming. But luckily enough, I was looking on Craigslist, and there was a lady that was selling this tank, relatively inexpensive, like $1,000 or something like that. And I actually went to her house with a truck, we picked it up, brought the tank back here. The coloration was different, and the sump was actually nestled underneath the tank. But once we had it in place, and I think that's when I first came here, my wife is like, that's a big tank. Like, because she's normally used to seeing a 55 or a corner tank or whatever it is, but we wanted to take advantage of the space that was here in the entryway and so forth. So luckily enough, like I said, I found that lady. I didn't even remember where she had the tank, but she had it in her garage set up. I was just praying that when I got it home, it didn't leak. I was like, please, no leaks. And it's been up and running ever since, knock on wood. No leaks, you know, since then. So
you have a lot of beautiful corals here. What is your favorite?
My favorite coral, believe it or not, is actually, and it's not a coral, if you want to call it a coral, like I'm not the expert. I just like what I see. People, you know, have scientific names, but I do love my Rideri anemone, right? It's one of those things, and the reason why I like it so much is, I remember when I went to Aquatech and Roger told me about Rideri anemones. Roger's there, right? And I used to go to the store like every week, like, hey, did you get any in yet? And I think finally I bought one. I first bought it, it was probably the size of a small softball when I got it. But the reason why I got the Rideri, because I always liked that relationship between the clownfish and the Rideri. Not only do I have the clownfish and the Rideri, but the clownfish are mating. So every couple of weeks they're laying eggs on the back wall. They've been doing that for like 8 years. That's one of the, maybe the areas of the tank that I love the most. Everything else, the corals are cool, but they just grow and they grow. But I really do like the Rideri anemone relationship with the fish.
Unfortunately, my clownfish doesn't like my anemones.
Oh, they
else,
love
but
it.
not them.
When I got the Rideri, I was like, great, I actually recreated the environment where the clownfish are in it, they're having babies. It's like the Nemo story. And again, why kids come go, Nemo, Dory, all that other stuff. So it's been exciting. So one of the great things about this tank when I first had it, well, to tell you the truth, was, you know, I wanted a canopy to help kind of keep the light inside the tank. This enclosure was really nice. I didn't know it did this when I was purchased from the lady, but I love the kind of hatchback with the strut type, you know, lifts and so forth. So it makes it easy to get into and in maintenance. You know, one of the other things about this tank is I kind of like all the little wire wrapping and how I mounted my lights is something that I kind of did on my own, right? You know, they talk about aquascaping, they talk about how you set it up. But the lighting system I have up here, some of the LED strips are kind of, you see a couple of them are out, but for the most part, over time, I've gone from metal halides in here. I had some, I forgot what they were called. They were like these larger Canon, I think Canon, photon cannons. I had 2 of those, which I have in my garage right now, which were great as well. Right now, I've kind of upgraded to these Kessels. They're Wi-Fi controllable. They're great, right? I actually probably don't need any other lighting in my system besides the Kessels, but because I had the strips, I turn them on, and because I have the other lights, I still utilize them and so forth. So they've been really good. As you see here, I have this little single light here, purchased on Amazon. It's kind of, I think I paid $60 or $80 for it. It's a single light that sits over the Rideri anemone. When I first purchased the Rideri, I heard that they moved a lot, and I've had, maybe I think the first one I had did kind of move. You know, anemones, they tend to go to different places. And the whole purpose of that light was to create just like a light source that maybe they just felt real comfortable with and they would stay in place. That guy hasn't moved ever since, so I don't know if it worked or he would have just stayed there anyway. But at the end of the day, that was the purpose of it, and the Rideri kind of stayed in place. It's healthy. I mean, I probably feed it more than I feed the fish, you know, because I do put Myas' shrimp inside there sometimes, and the clownfish get to eat from it and so forth. So, like I said, it's kind of my prized possession in there as far as, you know, if you want to say corals or if it's really called a coral. It's one of my favorite pieces. Favorite pieces inside of the tank. You know, it's important, like I said, when I tried to do this, I like to push the boundaries. I probably have more tang species in here than I needed to. That's why, you know, some of the fish I used to think get nipped up. I wanted to have a tank that had a good mix of corals, soft and hard where possible, as far as a good fish population. So I really kind of overstocked the tank at times. There were times when I had more fish in here. I had anthias flying all over the place and so forth. But I like that challenge of trying to really keep the mixed species in there, good population of fish. I'm like, I'll do water changes all day long if I can see all my pretty fish. But I know there's only so much room that they can dwell in, so it's been fun.
By the way, I didn't mention it yet. There's still the original wave box running.
Yeah, that wave box, you know, I'm to a point where I'm like, and that's why when you came, I was like, do I still even need that? Like, you know, you read all this stuff about water flows and how much water to move and stuff like that. I've got the 2 pumps from TUNZE. I've got the wave box, which I don't know if I need, but I will tell you that it does add that nice undulating kind of flow, right? Like people, when they do look at the tank, they go, why is it moving? Like, how's it moving? And I'm like, well, it's the pumps. And they're like, well, how are you making it move? So that wave box gives it a really nice flow. Honestly, maintenance-wise, I think I haven't touched that wave box in probably about a year. The pumps maybe a year and a half. from a maintenance standpoint. So that just tells you guys like, hey, these TUNZE products, maintenance is recommended, but if you don't do it, you'll still have some pretty good results and stuff like that. I know there's a sponge in there I should probably clean out, and that's probably the only thing, but great equipment. I've loved it day one, and it's funny, I try to tell folks about TUNZE, and I'm like, hey, TUNZE, like the best equipment on the market. Like when I go out there and buy stuff, some folks don't know about it. If you don't know about it, then you need to read about it.
And even a pump this old works
yes,
so long.
Flawlessly. You know, I've got my Apex. My Apex will come and tell me, hey, power's out, or the pH is up, or the temperature's up, but I don't have my Apex tell me that my pumps are failed or not running, or you know, anything weird. They've been reliable. We tend to travel quite often sometimes. And you know, one of the biggest things with travel is like, there's no one here, so you know, how does this tank stay maintained? You can feed it and stuff, but I always worry about power outages, and I worry about like some piece of equipment like going off. And luckily, knock on this nice, beautiful wood, that's yet to happen. Right?
Cool. And for you to know, we stopped manufacturing this kind of flow pump in 2007, so it's almost 20 years.
This has become part of my tank. As you can see, there's car line growth on it. We got some kind of weird in it. I mean, it's like, I know you guys have some other ones for me, but I'm afraid to take these out because they just look so like, they look like they're part of the tank.
Maybe it's possible to do a wave with the new pumps, or do you want to keep the wave pump?
Upgrading is something I may want to do anyway, but like to be honest with you, the only reason I'd like to take that wave box out is because it provides more space inside the tank, right? It's just, you know, as you can see, like, I think the fish stopped growing. I don't know if they can even grow anymore. So if I can move out a piece of equipment not needed potentially, but that was a question to know if the new Wi-Fi ones actually, you know, can you set them up? And I know you can with these systems to where they oscillate back and forth, where they actually create wave motions. So that would satisfy, you know, not having the wave box in the tank.
From the previous videos we did, I know it works.
Yeah.
The last part is your cabinet. Typically, there would be a filter inside.
Yeah,
this one is special.
Yeah, this system came, like I said, there's a sump that actually resided underneath the aquarium. And right now, please excuse my cable management.
Mine at home is even worse.
Yeah. So what I did, part of setting up the aquarium was I was trying to minimize noise in the house, larger bodies of water in the house, but just something about having the pump there, because my pump has I have a protein skimmer running in there. I have other pumps that are pushing reactors and so forth. So it sounded good at first, but realizing if I could have it separate would be even better. So what you see underneath here is just all the electronics that run the system. It's actually tied to a Wi-Fi through the Apex and so forth. So I kept that here. What I did do was I actually plumbed outside the wall, and luckily on the other side of this wall here, we have my garage. What better place to have it set up than the garage? So all of the water and filtration and activities, I can go out there, make a mess and so forth, and they can sit outside. So freed up the underneath of the tank. I'm proud of the fact that things are growing to where I can reap the benefit and bring them back into the store. So that's one thing. You know, when this hobby first started for me, it was like a lot of investment. You know, every Thursday I'm going to the store to see what new fish are coming in, buying this and buying that. It got to a point where it kind of couldn't add any more fish. The corals were doing what they were doing, but the tank started giving back because like the torches and the frog spawns, they were growing so much that I had to kind of like cleaning your lawn. Like you had to trim stuff out. But bringing those things back to the aquarium, getting credit, which bought their food and stuff like that, was a nice kind of, a nice feel. And I don't know if you've seen lately, but the price of fish, like a yellow tang is like $200-300, right? So, you know, the hobby's been good. And like I always say that I think, you know, throughout life, I'm probably gonna always have an aquarium somewhere in my house, especially a saltwater aquarium. So I think it's saltwater for life. I'd like to think I know what I was doing when people are like, well, how did you aquascape this and all that? I'm like, I just did it. You know, it's just like, they're like, there has to be, I'm like, no, you just, sometimes when I get bored, I'll come in here and try to rescape. And one thing about kind of like cutting back on some of the stuff, it would clean up the tank a little bit and allow things to kind of grow out, because, you know, you got to be aware about certain things that can't live next to each other that'll sting and have death and stuff like that. But yeah, I can show you guys the sump that's outside in terms of, you know, where all this is fed to.
This is a nice setup. Many people would like to have such a setup, because you can actually access everything.
Yeah.
You have space. You don't have to be on your knees all the time.
No, absolutely. That was one of the reasons why I kind of set it up this way in the first place, right? One of the things I didn't want to be too confined in the house, like working underneath that tank.
Yeah.
Sounds good at first, but when you do it every month or whatever, you quickly lose interest in doing that. And as like I said, I've been doing tanks since I was like, you know, smaller. And one thing you do is you learn every time about doing water changes and access to things and cleaning and doing maintenance. So when I had the opportunity to kind of like bring everything outside, create that space, build a little fixture that's forgivable, right? If I got water on the floor, no problem. If I, made a mess, no problem. Sometimes when the reactors get kind of funky, get that eggy smell, it's kind of out here versus in the house, so no problem. But this is probably one of the best things that I did or had the ability to do when setting up the tank, because from a maintenance standpoint, it made me want to do maintenance even more, right? Access to just come in here and drop and dose stuff, not bending down underneath the tank inside the house and being careful not to drop water on the top, It made it a little bit easier. And also I was able to address things like water changes, where I was able to get these drums, which I have my top off, so in here I have just regular RO water, RODI water that I actually manufacture in another garage over there.
Cool.
So I have my RODI water. And again, vacation, I know I can leave and I'm not worried about the tank running low, right? I can be gone for 2.5, 3 weeks and we're good. And inside here I have an Osmo regulator, I think one of the newer ones that you guys carry. So that is probably one of the best toys, or I won't even call it a toy. It's one of the things that I'm most proud of, because I don't have to come and add water to my tank. I mean, that thing, 1/8 of an inch movement in the water, and it's adding water. As long as I do my part, it does its part. So I think we're good. And then I have another drum over here where I'll mix water once a month for my changes. And the great thing, as I mentioned before, about learning from doing water changes and stuff like that, I mix it. I don't have to carry it anywhere. I let it sit in there and mix. And if you notice, I have some plumbing that's piped. That goes right above the tank inside in a little spigot.
Yeah.
So I just turn on my pump here and I drain the water level down in there, get this to the right temperature, and just turn it on and water fills up, all done. It's about ease of use and just, what I've been able to do. But I actually love having this out here and just the access to the equipment to be able to do the maintenance and so forth.
What is this?
So that's my Coreline denitrator. One of the things that when I got into the hobby, they learned a lot about was like nitrate levels. Oh, and I thought that was the biggest reason to do water changes, was to manage your nitrate levels. Well, especially when you have a tank like mine where you're trying to like overstock it with fish, and they eat well. I mean, I feed those fish, right? So one of the ways to kind of balance that out is I wanted something to help me kind of manage nitrates without me just doing water changes, because honestly, I don't do them every month. Sometimes you slip up. That little gizmo there I kind of got, and once it acclimates for about 4 to 6 weeks, it really does denitrate the water that's flowing through it, and it helps me balance out the nitrate. Allows me to keep more fish stock. It allows me to kind of overfeed when I'm feeling generous to the fish. It's also a great piece of equipment that I like. Again, one of the things that helped me minimize what I have to dose and do water changes, I was looking for ways to kind of make the hobby a little bit easier, and that's a tool that helps me do that.
Cool.
But I don't see UV or ozone.
No, I've had, you can probably find one of my UVs over here somewhere dumped in and so forth. There's that old Canon light, right, sitting on the corner there. I got a backup pump ready, and again, I kind of merged the garage here. But I ran UV, in this hobby, at one point what was where that denitrator is, I had another tank where I was doing a refugium for trying to grow some algae and stuff like that. So I've had refugiums, I've had UV lights on this tank, I've had reactors. I've tried a lot of different things on the tank, and every time, like I put a UV on, the bulbs would go out, I buy a new bulb, I didn't see any changes in the algae. That I started reading about. If you have UV lights, it kills good things as well as bad things. And at the end of the day, what you see here is what I've stripped down to. Like, I don't have the UV lights. I don't have refugiums running. And I've been running this tank for 13 years, and it works. I think someone said it before, Roger. Sometimes you kind of over-engineer these things, right? I think I love my tank. I mean, I really love to interact with it. It's no different than someone who loves working on car engines, and the car looks perfectly fine, but you see the guy out there every day just dorking with something. It's like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm just tightening this screw. I'm just adding this. That's the way I'm with the tank. It's like, I keep my eye on it. I just like interacting with it, but not to where I got to go buy more stuff for it. But it is a love of just, it provides me with a certain level of calmness, and I can do bare minimum stuff to keep it that way, and I'm happy with it. So it's the experience. I mean, I can walk by my tank and I can look at it. I can look at the fish, and I can look at the lights and see when something's off, when they need to be, so it is experience over time where you are so much into the hobby that you start to notice when things need to be attended to. Not because you read it, somebody said every 6 months do this and every 3 months do this. My tank is like on a as needed or on demand type of thing, where I will tend to when it needs to be tended to, but for the most part, it's pretty stable. And I think that's the word, right? Like, you got it for 10 years. It's a stable system. So
UV is just for safety.
It is for safety, and I look, when I first got my tank, like I would never get a pot of blue. I was like, ick, I got to get UVs. So I've had UVs when I'm introducing new fish, and I've tried them for a while. But again, when your tank gets stable, and if you can introduce fish the right way, I've done things like turn off the lights. I've done blackouts for a couple of days. I've tried to move rocks around and so forth. So there's other ways to do certain things, and the UV was just something that the only reason I wanted one was for disease and ick. But like I'll dose garlic in the food, but I've never had like a bad disease ick outbreak or something like that. So there was one point where it was like cool having UVs. Like I got a UV, I got a calcium reactor. It was like nice to have this stuff. But then I was like, I didn't notice that much of a difference. I'm sure you can add it, and if you maybe sat there and did the maintenance and just kind of stuck with it. But I was able to kind of slim down. I got an old friend of mine. He always talked about back to the basics. Just invest your time, invest in good equipment, like some of the pumps and stuff where you don't have to worry about it, and everything else kind of works out. So I've been happy with it.
So I'm quite sure that you could fill hours with stories about your tank. I really appreciated all your lessons and everything you showed us here. Thank you very much. But this story doesn't end here. He actually allowed us to touch this tank in a way that some might not allow us. So in the next video, we're going to change the flow in Mike's tank. So if you want to see more about it, then just wait for the next week. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for inviting us. Sorry. Thank you for watching this video. Thank you, Mike, for inviting us.
You're welcome.
So, and we are looking forward for the next video. See you.